Welcome back to The Script with Shellz, the #1 League of Legends interview series on the internet. Hosted by me, I'm Shellz, and today we have the absolute pleasure of being joined by ChuChuZ. He's here with us right now, coach of the Golden Guardians, but he's also looking to make a slight change in his in his label very, very soon. How you doing today, ChuChuZ?
I'm doing good, man. It's good to be here.
Look, first off, I want to talk about who you are as a coach before we go any further down to what your future plans may be. I think you might be the highest ranked coach in the history of League of Legends. I don't have the numbers. I don't have the facts in front of me right now. But I think as we stand right now, you're at about 1K LP, I think rank around 100 in NA. In this season, you've been going both in mid and support. I believe you're looking at more support lately. Just give me a quick rundown on how you find the time to grind out solo queue and be a coach at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I was a professional before.
But the players that will be going ham in this series will be ChuChuZ and Cardred. They both had fantastic game yesterday.
So being an ex-professional, a big advantage I thought I could provide transitioning to being a coach is maintaining my skill. I think coaches that were ex-professionals can do a really good job like leveling themselves with the players. So I never wanted to lose that skill, you know? I've been coaching for like 3 years now.
Right.
And I've always maintained that level. I've always tried to end challenger wherever I could. And it's just something I prioritize. So I'm pretty proud of it.
Is that more of a personal goal of yours, or is that something that you think adds legitimacy and more of a foundation of what you're talking about? Because obviously you hear what people say all the time about coaches. What do coaches do? Who are coaches? Why are they needed? Like, these guys sometimes are, you know, plat, diamond, maybe they have some LP and master. Do you find it gives you more of a stable foundation when speaking to players?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when I was a player, I would reflect and think about like the coaches I had at the time, you know, like they're offering you advice, and sometimes it's really hard for them to, like I said, like level themselves and like be a part of like what's actually happening in the game. So maintaining this like level of like challenger level where I can play the game at a higher level when I'll lane against the players I work with, and solo queue and things like that. I do it all to like not just have like that additional level of respect, but to offer, I guess, a bit more to them. Like I have the capacity to like 1v1 my players, while a lot of coaches can't do that. Like they'll need to, you know, get the academy mid laner to step in, start 1v1ing. I pride myself in being able to, you know, like put myself in their shoes and try help them from that angle.
Right. So not just what goes on in the mind of a player, but you can also use the mechanics and you can show them while you're speaking rather than having some kind of like intermediary go between you two. So give me a quick little rundown, because I did mention this earlier, of what is actually the role of a coach. I think there's sometimes we get a little confused. I think in traditional sports, it's a little bit easier to understand what a coach is, what a coach does. And after watching some of these amateur arena in-houses, and I saw how players draft without coaches, I got a little bit more of an insight on just how important coaches can be when going into a game or whatever. But just give me a little bit more insight, you know, player management, draft, mediator, life stuff. What all goes into the role of a coach?
Yeah, I mean, I've answered this question a bit recently, but I would say probably like 2-3 years ago, coaches in League of Legends were very much specialized towards teaching the game. But the past couple years, I think the player base, everyone's grown to be a lot smarter with YouTube VODs. Everyone's watching Twitch streams and ProView coming out. The players are just a lot smarter nowadays. So coaches have, in my opinion, have leaned more towards mediating, like discussion between players rather than teaching. But like I won't say one goes without the other.
Right.
But a lot of my time, a lot of a coach's time will be spent trying to have effective practice, effective conversation. And I find that tends to be prioritize more than the teaching element of things.
In your first year, or between your first and second year working with Golden Guardians, you had a huge challenge come up after a complete roster swap. I think you guys were like, what, 6th and 5th in the 2 splits in 2020. Ain't do that good in 2021, this past year, but the whole roster churned on you. So just give me a quick idea as to what was, like, internally, what were those talks like? What was the message and the plan like when you saw all these things falling into place, or maybe falling out of place, I guess?
I mean, the answer to that question is on YouTube, because our head of esports, like Hunter, he made a YouTube video being completely transparent with what was happening at Golden Guardians at the time.
I wouldn't blame people externally from asking some of the same questions people are asking internally, which is, if we're not going to spend now, will we ever spend? You know, if we're not going to hold on to talent once we find them now, will we ever do it? And I know the answer is yes, but I don't blame people for asking that question, or frankly, for not believing me when they hear me say it. I think it's a reasonable position to take, given everything that you can see from the outside.
Like lack of funding from the Warriors due to the whole
The stadium.
Corona. Exactly. So we were put in a pretty tight spot, but Golden Guardians does a really good job trying to do what they can for the players, especially in the position that they were in. I wasn't in every one of those conversations, but it was very much like, we're gonna have to rebuild. Like, we need names. We need to like do a lot of scouting, a lot of research on like what is currently out there, and try build back up. Because I think we didn't really have any locked pieces at the start. And it was more one of those things where it just happens all on one night, you know? Like, you just wake up the next day and it's like, okay, like, get the whiteboard out, like let's figure it out. So it was a challenge after being here for only 1 year, because my understanding of the region was still developing. But it was very much one of those things where like you're thrown in the deep end and you got to figure it out.
Right.
But yeah, like irrespective of like the results of this year compared to the year prior, I think the boys we chose and the boys improved so much. I think we ended up making playoffs, and we lost to C9, but it was still such a big win for us coming up with these rookies.
Yeah, and I think being too results based in how the season ended can be a kind of a trap to fall into. I think no one had you guys. I don't think very many people had you guys making playoffs.
Not at all.
Look, I'll be honest. I mean, me. I didn't have you guys making playoffs after what I saw going on. But I mean, being able to actually get there is huge. But you mentioned scouting, right? What's the makeup of a good player that fits the system, and are there systems put in place? Like, I know that sometimes what we see on the outside is these are 5 good players right here, 5 good players, put them on the team, let's make it work. Do we ever see the kind of thing where it's like, okay, these are 3 players who work well together, and these 2 other role players? Or what exactly goes into scouting and building a team as a coach or as a scout on a team?
You reminded me of a funny tweet Kelsey Moser made. I don't want to butcher it, but I am going to butcher it. she tweeted out saying how something pretty important when you're scouting players is to actually watch their replays. Just taking a little snipe at I don't know who, but she's not wrong. I think the key thing that goes into scouting is you have to put like a lot of time into comparing these players, because and I would say that's one of the advantages particularly ex-professionals have, is you will notice the nuances that not everyone will notice. So a lot of the time we were just watching a lot of solo queue VODs. Golden Guardians, along with a lot of teams, hosts like trials, like 2-week period where we reach out to 50 or so players and we like create a bracket and we just get them to play against each other for 2 weeks. And like myself and Spooks, who's one of the other Australian coaches, we would coach either side, and that would give us more intimate. That would pretty much like give us a better read of who we were trying to pick up. elements outside of just the game, like
Right.
how are they talking, how are they like communication wise, all of that. But the biggest thing like most coaches are looking at is just inherent, like just mechanical ability.
Hmm.
A lot of the game can be taught, especially the macro part, but the mechanical ability, that's like probably the biggest thing that most coaches will be looking out for. Is like, are you landing your skill shots, or like, are you positioned in the right spot in this specific team fight? Um, and that requires just a lot of like VOD watching. You just got to pay a lot of attention to that one person, because you're comparing against them. You're comparing against 4 or 5 other players, and you need to. It becomes very thin, like trying to determine what this one player has over the other.
Right.
But a lot of it was just a lot of VOD research. Yeah.
It's a lot of research. Is there, I guess, any sort of priority into this player that we definitely want or already have in the squad has this kind of play style, and these players right here may not be the greatest mechanically, but their play styles work well with this guy we already have in the squad right here?
It is oddly specific to see that, in my opinion. I think most teams would be seeing this player is just like, mechanically insane, and like there's a few things they're doing wrong, but like the potential is there. The basis for every player that you measure them against is just like their mechanical ability. Everything else can be taught. So that is primarily what you're looking at. But there is situations where, say, one player excels in communication, the ability to lead a team, and that has to be talked about. There's not a lot of great leaders. Like, I would say, like one in every five players is a natural leader or communicator. But it is a significant advantage they bring forward. Because every team, when it comes into those clutch positions, like all 3 inhibs are down, like your nexus is exposed, like you need someone to be confident to make those big calls. I guess like that's kind of the X factor that's hard to pinpoint when you're scouting players, but usually these players who are naturally good at communicating and leading, that's something we would like to consider when we're thinking about who to pick up.
Right. Okay. I can definitely see that. You can teach the other things, but the mechanics and decision making, and if there isn't already a leader on the squad, then trying to find that as well. So I guess I've heard that from the coach's perspective. For you as a player, what are some of the most important things you like in teammates?
Number one thing would be the ability to have honest conversation. I think in every team, like, you only make it so far if you don't expose yourself and really just like talk about what the problems are on the team or how you're feeling. And I feel like every player will go through that. You can only hold out so long, like keeping everything hidden away and like just, like if you're winning, then things are working. But when things go wrong, that is where honest conversation is most important. And that is the number one thing I would value in my teammates in those rough periods. Just being able to talk things out.
And as someone who was a coach, that was part of, like you said earlier, mediating and get things in order, do you think that you could be the kind of in-game leader, but also a good leader outside of the game, as in like, when you're doing review or you're, talking about the game just outside of it? What do you think your experience leads you to be potentially?
I hope so, man. Like, I mean, I've worked with so many players at this point, and I've done so many reviews. Like, it's not hard to see when a review goes well compared to when a rough one happens. But yeah, like you said, people are going to get tilted. Like, it's natural. The way in which they handle their tilt is the biggest thing for me. Like, you can. I think that comes back into like being honest with each other, where if you're aware of how you deal with frustration or tilt and you express it beforehand, then people will have the heads up. It's like you're predictable at that point.
Right.
And that's probably the best advice I was ever given in my 7 years of esports is always try and be predictable to your teammates, whether that's inside of the game or outside of the game. So if you're aware of how you act and you're aware that you're a little short-tempered, and like you let people know, like, hey, after this game, like if it goes bad, like I just need like a minute to like step outside, then like, you know, mad respect to you. Like you're super self-aware of like what you need to do to get into the right headspace so we can have an effective review. And anything along those lines, like I have so much respect for those kinds of players. And that would be a big piece of advice I'd give to any young player. If I was your teammate, I would tell you the exact same thing.
I think that actually is a really good segue to start talking about your return into being a player. So you were professional before, very great. I know you were going actually crazy on the Oceania server, even playing on NA from there. This is old history. This is ancient history for you.
You've done your research,
Yeah. Going from being a professional to being a coach at the LCS level, and now going back to being a player, what advantages do you think you have as someone who was a coach coming back and playing as a professional in today's game?
Yeah, I mean, I won't try and perk myself up too much, but
Please do. Please do.
I would say like the biggest strength I have is I mean it's a little similar to what I said before, but I've maintained like a pretty high level when it comes to laning and mid lane particularly. That's been my main role for 6-7 years. And I've also been like I was a head coach for 2 years, and then I became an assistant coach. So I know what it takes to lead a team, having a good environment. And I also have like, I've spent most of my time cultivating ideas rather than performing them. But I happen to be one of the few coaches that can perform them.
Right.
So it was thrown around a lot, but I thought this off season would be a good opportunity to actually like try and like go back into playing and see how I feel, because you know life's too short. You know, like may as well make the most of an opportunity. So I would say my biggest strength is like I've researched the game a lot more than what most players would expect. But I also have the ability to perform just because I've maintained that level of being challenged every single season. So that'd be it.
And if you were to come back, you may have answered this before. You already mentioned, you know, you played mid for a long time, pretty much your whole life, but you have been playing some support quite often. You even played support in the in-houses just a few days ago, actually. If you were to make a return, would it be the mid lane or would it be as a support player?
It would be as a support. I think there's already. I'm not trying to flame supports or like mids or any of that, but I think coming through with the strength that I think I have, which is like I have a pretty good understanding of how the game should be played, based on every circumstance, how the game evolves. I think you have more control as a support player. Jungle support are just too important in today's game. Everyone will regard them as the most OP roles. And laners, like a lot of the time, you know, they focus on, you know, just maintaining CS, trying to keep up with like their opponent. But these moving pieces in jungle and support are too important. And if I was going to come back to being a player, I would prioritize one of those like key moving pieces.
Understandable. And we have seen mid laners go to role swap to support, and we all know about how the mid jungle duo is very important and how jungle diff is support diff. So you understand how those three things all intertwine in certain ways. So you're pretty fairly aware of how a lot of teams in the scene perceive age and perceive, you know, the scouting of players independent of their skills. Sometimes age sometimes becomes a bigger factor. What are your thoughts on how that's become more prevalent in the scene, and if it holds any credence in your mind at all?
I mean, I definitely thought about it because I retired three years ago. So it's been a long time since I was a player. But it was one of those things where I kept proving myself wrong. Um, I pretty much like continued to play the game as much as I could, and at the end of each season, I would just come to the same question of like, I could probably give this a shot, and even though like I retired when I was 22, I felt like I mean, I would say like nowadays, just I feel like I've gotten better over the past 3 years of being a coach. And I would say that my hunger for the game never really diminished. So people can look at me and think that like it's been 3 years since he actually performed. But that's just part of the, I guess, the gamble you're going to have to take is I can try and prove you wrong through what I've been able to work at for the past 3-4 years. But I only made this decision because I was confident in my ability.
So before I get you out of here, I have two more things for you. And this may actually parlay into what we just talked about. But what's the one thing in League, whether it's the game, the scene, whatever it may be, what's the one thing that you have, I guess your biggest pet peeve, the one thing that annoys you so much you could go on for hours talking about? You can go on just, you'd have to be physically stopped to stop complaining about.
One tricks in the NA server, probably. I don't think I've ever played on a server where there's this many one tricks. Yeah, I mean, it'd probably be that. Like,
I'm looking at you, Tempos. I'm looking right at you, Tempos.
like, I love Tempos.
He's funny. He's a funny dude.
He's great, but man, there's just way too many one tricks on this server, and yeah, I'm a big fan of like people, I guess, branching out a bit. I don't know, like I don't really have anything against it. It's just a bit frustrating at times.
Do we not like one tricks, or do we not like one tricks when they don't get their champion? Or is it that they do get the champion and doesn't fit the comp? What exactly about one tricks is it?
I don't like, I mean, I feel bad for the other team if their one trick doesn't have their champion, because I put myself in their shoes and I'm like, God, this was a dodge. And
one tricks don't be dodging. One tricks do not like dodging.
Yeah, no, I mean they don't. Like they'll force like that's part of like the reason why it's a problem is everyone essentially gets one dodge a day and you're forced to spend it on at least like one trick, but then you'll probably just run into another one like after the dodge timer goes down. So yeah, that would probably be my one pet peeve. It's just like there's just way too many one tricks on this server.
Well, they see themselves as artists, so I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
I don't think it will.
and I feel like I think a lot of streamers are actually one tricks. But
the thing with those streamers though is like I feel like some of them actually play more than the one champion. Like Hums plays like Caitlyn, and he's a Draven one trick, and then TF Blade. I mean, he plays everything, but he's considered a Jux one trick at this point. But yeah, I mean, that's all I would ask is like if you can make the time to get one or two more champions in that pool, then I think you're saving a lot of time for everyone. And essentially, we're just like you're no longer tied to a one trick pony at that point.
Right. Please branch out. One trick ponies of NA. All right. Look, ChuChuZ, it was great having you today, man. One last thing. The floor is yours. Anything you want to promote, you want to shout out, you want to say, whatever you want to say, man, get it out right now.
Man, I don't know what team I'll end up on, but I would just say, like, if I'm a player, if I'm a coach next year, try and support me. And I appreciate it. That's pretty much all I have.
Okay. If you guys are out there, coaches, teams that need coaches, ChuChuZ is here. Look to make a return as a player. You've seen what he does as a coach, and very insightful here today on the script here. Thank you for being here. I think we've learned a lot about you, and I really do hope that at some point. Wait, have you been invited to any of the tryouts for these academy teams that are coming up soon?
I have.
You have. Oh, well, that's great. That's great. Well, that's part one. Wait, have you gotten an invite to all of them?
I don't know. Probably not.
Probably not.
all of
Okay.
them.
Okay. So, but more than one though, right?
Yeah.
All right, that's a good start, man. That's a huge start. Well, that's all time we have today for the Script with Shellz, the #1 League of Legends interview series on the internet, hosted by me. Today we had ChuChuZ. Thank you once again for coming on the show, man. And until next time,